And I think that's part of what happens in the world, that we get stuck by old behaviours and we don't question them and we don't update them. We studied a lot of people who had issues and they'd overcome them themselves. So it was like, instead of studying someone's problem, it was studying someone's success. And why, how were they successful? How did they manage to overcome something?
You have found the Thinking Mind podcast.
Nik and Eva Speakman, collectively known as the Speakmans, are British therapists, authors and life coaches. They have studied and worked together since 1992, sharing a passion to help people lead happier and less inhibited lives. They have created their own therapy known as Schema Conditioning Psychotherapy, based on the work by Jean Piaget, Ivan Pavlov, John Watson and B.F. Skinner. The Speakmans regularly appear on ITV's This Morning and have helped countless people all over the world with anxiety, OCD, PTSD, phobias, and low self-esteem. Thank you both so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate your time. And we also have an extra special guest as well. Would you mind introducing them?
Yes, certainly. We've actually brought with us to join us on the podcast today our daughter, Liv.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm here today. I'm Nik and Eva's daughter, as they said. I also work with them as I studied at the University of Oxford, studying neuroscience and experimental psychology. So we share the same passion.
Yes, we do, yeah. And Liv's kind of, which I'm sure we'll talk about throughout the podcast, Liv is kind of the go-between with the professors and the doctors and the researchers at Utrecht University, where our therapy has been and is currently being scientifically studied and researched, with some very exciting results, with 3 studies so far. 2 papers have been published and clinical trials are currently underway, which is, like I say, just so wonderful, because all we've ever really wanted to do was to share. We have a incredible success rate with the people that we help, and to think that something that we do and we've been doing is now translatable for other therapists and other psychologists to conduct with the same results is just wonderful, because it means that we are a step closer to being able to share our therapy sort of hopefully all over the world.
That's perfect. And I'm really excited to speak about that a little bit later specifically. First of all, I wanted to ask the both of you, where did this all begin and how did you end up what you're doing today, which is what appears to be amazing, but how did it start?
Yeah, basically, this started off in 1980, because in 1980, I was rushed into hospital and I was told that I had a condition called toxic megacolon, which was a step further than ulcerative colitis. And I was told that I had 6 to 8 weeks to live. Now, I was given 2 options, basically. One, I was going to die, which obviously isn't a great option. And the second one, that I was going to have a life-saving operation, which would remove my bowel and give me an ileostomy and a colostomy bag, which is something, over the years, I've met so many people who've had that operation, but I didn't feel that it was for me at that moment in time. So I went searching for an alternative, and I was very fortunate in the fact that my dad always told me that anything is possible. You can always find an answer. The answer is always in the library, because ultimately people have shared their lives and their work and their experience, and that's the fountain of knowledge. So I signed myself out of hospital and I looked for an answer. And I struggled to find an answer, because basically, even though I had one of the top gastroenterologists in the UK at that time, who also lectured at several universities, he told me that bowels don't heal. So essentially the only way to overcome this situation is to have the operation. Whereas all the medical books that I read, that I didn't quite understand at the time, concurred the same thing. And just fortunately at that time, I had a cut on my finger and I kept picking that cup because of the stress and anxiety and so on. And I had this thought process that what if that's not going to heal because I keep picking it? And what if that's why bowels don't heal? Because from the moment we're born, we stop. We never stop eating. We're always eating something, and therefore there's always something going through our bowel and doesn't get a chance to have a break. And using that theory, I then changed my diet and I changed my life, and obviously I didn't die and I didn't need the operation. What it actually helped me consider at that time was the fact that, well, if that's the case, I had one of the top gastroenterologists in the UK and perhaps even the world, and he wasn't right with what he told me.
His intention.
Yeah, no, nothing about the intention. Ultimately, he wanted to save my life. That's without question. However, I didn't consider alternatives, and therefore it's potentially information flawed, because information is passed down over generations, and if we don't question it, then we just accept it. And therefore I started studying psychology because I wanted to understand, why is that the case? And that was now almost 40 years ago.
I was going to say, when you mentioned that you had to go into the library, that does signify just how old you are.
Well, yeah. Obviously, it's far easier these days, I might say, because I've got Google, So, and so from that moment, I started literally questioning everything that I did, all my behaviours. I wanted to know why would I do that? And even simple things that are just that I would highlight, in the fact that if I had a cup of tea, I would always leave some in the bottom. And I would go, well, why do I do that? Why?
I do that too.
Right. Well, here's the thing.
I've got my cup of tea, yeah.
Yes, well, I've got the answer for you, see, and it took me a while to figure that out, because at first I thought, well, actually, it's gone cold now, so I'll leave it because it's cold. But I remember at one point where we were in therapy, and I was, and I didn't drink any of my tea. And then at the end of the session, I drank it all, and so I drank it, it was cold, but I still left the bit at the bottom. And then I figured out that obviously this must be a learned behavior. And I realized that actually that my parents used to drink tea from tea leaves, and therefore they didn't want a mouth of tea leaves. Whereas, obviously, we've moved on. We've now got tea bags, and therefore you don't get the tea leaves. And once I realised that, and I changed that behaviour, I now drink the whole thing, hot or cold, it doesn't matter. So, and I think that's part of what happens in the world, that we get stuck by old behaviours, and we don't question them, and we don't update them with new sciences, new technologies, and new changes. Because once we do that, we can totally change lives.
That's so funny, yeah.
So that's sort of how it started. And then when I met Eva, it was 31 years ago now. And yes, I know. Yeah. But I know we don't look old enough. Thank you. And I said, look, this is an amazing thing that I've realised, that people don't question things. We just, we're born in life, and we just, our parents are our first role models, and we just tend to copy behaviours. And there's so many things that we just accept without asking why. And one of the worst things worst statements on the planet is, when you say to someone, why do you do that? And they go, well, it's because we've always done it, with no reason why and no definition to it. So anyway, I shared this with Eva, and we've been on this journey together ever since. And I
think it's fair to say that I was probably Nik's first project, in that when we met.
We want to be fair with the second, because I was the first,
okay.
Yes. But
so when we met, I'd had a challenging childhood, and as a consequence of that challenging childhood, I was quite an anxious person. I was incredibly shy. I was very quiet. I had rock bottom self-esteem. I had phobias. I'd had an eating disorder. And so I was sort of a culmination of many different problems that we actually treat now. And that, for me, when because of my upbringing, because of my conditioning, when Nik started to say that people can change, I was quite resistant to that. I believed that I am as I am because this is how I was born. And Nik sort of introduced me to the.
I think that's quite an important thing to say there, Eva, that I think a lot of people just accept who they are, and they don't realise that actually, they can change literally anything any behaviours. Yeah,
behaviours, certainly. So yeah, and then Nik kind of introduced me. And at first, I was like, I really don't think I'm a believer. But slowly, he kind of, just listen to this and let me tell you about that. And slowly, I kind of progressed and thought, you know what, this is actually really, really interesting and really fascinating. And once we started helping people and making that difference as well, then it kind of became where we just wanted to help more and more people and get our therapy and our approach and our sort of thought processes out to help more people, which we're very fortunate that that's what we do now.
I'm gathering from everything you're saying, it's resonating with what I've been reading in your books, both Everyday Confidence and Conquering Anxiety, is the kind of the schema conditioning therapy. And that kind of, to me, it underlines everything that you write about. Would you agree? And if so, are you able to explain to our listeners what that is?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, we've actually created 3 separate therapies, but the as you say, the main one is schema conditioning, and one of the ways that we created that was by, which I think is sort of, I don't know if this is an entirely different approach, but what we wanted studying people, we studied a lot of people who had issues and they'd overcome them themselves. So it was like, instead of studying someone's problem, it was studying someone's success. And their journey, and why? How were they successful? How did they manage to overcome something? If reading conditions in the DSM, for example, would be considered, this is it for life. You've got that, you can't overcome that. And yet people, because of their own experience, they've overcome that. So that was like the starting point and working back in some respects. But our schema condition is based on the fact that when we are born, using John Watson, for example, when we're born, it's tabula rasa, it's a blank slate, and therefore all your behaviours have been learned, and that's without exception. So whereas I think a lot of people, where we believe that they leave open a margin for error, is that they believe that, well, perhaps some of your behaviours could be learned, and therefore using that model, then perhaps we can't help you overcome your issues.
Not learned. So we are born with a small proportion.
Yeah. So, but if you leave the door open, then there's always an element of things going wrong. Whereas we always want to look. If we believe that you weren't born with this destructive behaviour, whatever that might be, then we have the ability to help you over it. So what we want to do is look at the starting point as a timeline, because we want to know, right, okay, it's not what's wrong with you right now, because we know that there's all sorts of psychosomatic symptoms. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you, right? So what was that thing in your past, and how did you interpret that event? Not, what was the event specifically, but how did you interpret it? And that interpretation depends very much on the age of that you were and your cognitive development when that event happened.
Yeah, and I think basically our schema conditioning is based on understanding what that person's thought process is, how they perceive events in their life, and then conditioning them with new evidence. And literally, our therapy is a talking therapy, or the schema conditioning certainly is. It's literally just a talking therapy to offer a different perspective, because quite often, and what we've learned over the years, and our success lies in, we understand, we look to origins of people's anxieties and people's low self-esteem and sort of limited beliefs, and we look at what happened, we look at how they perceived it, and then we offer alternative evidence to give them a different perspective. And once they have a different perspective, then, because our thoughts create our feelings, then a new thought will create a new feeling. A better thought will create a better feeling. A more negative thought will create a more negative feeling. And literally, that's all it is. And over the years, and what we seem to have...
But it's not just new evidence. It's overwhelming evidence. And I suppose that's the benefit of us working in therapy together, because we will have, both Eva and I will have different contra evidence, and we will keep offering more and more and more evidence, and until you can actually see the shift. And the key to us is when someone always says to us, I've never seen it that way before.
That's
because
when you
we know that then they've got a different perspective on those version of events, and therefore that different perspective creates a different outcome and subsequently different behaviours.
But for every but we come back with some more information, and we keep going until we get that, oh, I've not seen it like that before. And like Nick said, that's when you really know that you've made a difference, because you've given them something, a different viewpoint of an event in their life.
Yeah, I completely agree. And reading your book, initially when I started reading about the phobias, I said to myself, I don't have any phobias. But then when I read one of the examples of the clients you worked with, you asked your hairdresser, I think it was, are you scared of anything? And she said no. But then you asked her, what makes you scream? And then I thought to myself, what makes me scream? And I could list so many things: moths, spiders, pigeons, loads of things. And then I started to think to myself, why am I scared of these things? And it's only until you stop and think back to when you were a child and you realize, I was scared of pigeons because one flew on me when I was 5 years old, and I'm now 27 and I now am still scared of pigeons, but that's ridiculous. Did the pigeon do me any harm?
Yes.
That's what I've got from your book. Is that what you tried to portray? Am I explaining it well?
No, absolutely. That's perfect, because, ultimately, and I would ask you, so should we do a test even, right? So if you, Rebecca, think about pigeons right now, and let's say we use the Likert scale, and you give me, how do you feel like from a negative response, 0 to 10, where would you be?
Probably a 7 or an 8. I really don't like pigeons.
Wow, you really don't like pigeons, do you?
If one was in my room, I'd be running out right now.
Gosh.
Okay, wow.
I think it's amazing, if I can just add there, that you didn't label that as a phobia, because, obviously the words that we use do dictate how we feel and how we see the world. And it's that, that is really great that you didn't give it any sort of label so that it impeded your life in any way. It did, but obviously you kind of just got on with it, but it's
really interesting, because I've got a personal view that everybody's got something, you see, because we all have similar lives. So if anyone can have a phobia, then I believe that everyone can have a phobia, but you might just use different terminology. And the last time I looked at, I think, Anxiety UK's website, I think they said something like 23% of the population have phobias, or it might have been, but whatever it was, I'm thinking, well, I just think that if we can all learn to walk, we can all speak more than one language, we can all, learn maths, then we can all get a phobia, because ultimately it's a learned behavior. But anyway.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a phobia as such, everyone has deep fears, And the useful thing about extreme emotions, I find that extreme emotions, be it fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, are often very useful portals for psychological growth. They're like weeds poking out of the ground, saying, okay, look here, here's a marker that's worth exploring. And what I liked about the approach you described is I use a similar approach. I often see clients, for example, who have extreme emotional instability, so their emotions swing wildly. And I take a similar approach of trying to think, what happened to you in the time when your emotional systems were developing? And I think the advantage of it is it's very destigmatizing, because it takes what society might label, let's say, as a crazy person, and you're taking these symptoms of like emotional volatility, and you're saying, listen, this was logical, it was rational when you were 5 years old. If you had very inconsistent, volatile parenting, it makes sense to have similarly volatile emotions, because you never know when you need to run, escape, whatever. And I think so clients appreciate that a lot, to say, there's a rationale to why you develop this way and not a different way.
Honestly, Alex, I think what you've said there is just, it's so lovely to hear that, that you've got that vision. I love your analogy about the weeds. I think that is brilliant. And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people come to us believing that they're broken, and believing that they've got something that they can never get over. And again, I think part of our success and with our schema condition is that we actually say, well, look, it's no wonder that you feel like this, because this happened. And any origin of behavior, any event or trauma that we've experienced, it's relative, because if something happens when you're aged 5 to when you're aged 15, the repercussions of that are going to be significantly different because of your life experience, because you'd be able to see it from, you've got a larger view of the world and a greater ability to interpret what that might be. And I think that's, you're absolutely, a lot of people say to us, I've got this, I've got that, I just wish I was normal. And our theory is, well, because this happened in your life, like you say, what you're saying there, exactly that, is because this happened in your life, actually you are normal. And a lot, people say, I wish I was normal. Now, my response is always, if you were normal, you would be the most abnormal person that I've ever met, because we all have events in life that give us these fears, phobias, as we were saying with Rebecca there, things that she's fearful of. But surely that's quite normal to have these sort of some beliefs and behaviours that maybe don't serve us particularly well, but they are a response to an event that has previously occurred to us at some point in our life.
So maybe we'll go back to Rebecca then. So Rebecca, you said that if there was a pigeon in your room right now, just remind me what you said.
I'd run out. I wouldn't stay in the room, without a doubt.
Okay. Right. So you see, for you to say that, then you believe that pigeons are dangerous. Is that fair to say?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I just don't like them.
And well, then why would you run out? So let me ask you.
Let me ask you a question then. So if you walked into a room, right, and there was maybe quite a few people in that room, but there was one guy that you specifically did not like, okay, for whatever reason, he wasn't your type, but he reminded you maybe of someone who bullied you at school or whatever, and you did not like them, would you run out of that room in the same way?
Probably not. No, I'd compose myself and hold it together because I'm an adult.
Oh,
okay.
Maybe.
Can I just check, are we paying for this?
It's on the house. Right. So I want you to consider that, and just tell us what actually happened with the pigeon incident. Just go through that again, please.
How it started.
Probably because my mother's afraid of pigeons, I think.
Okay.
There you go.
You see, so essentially, your mum who taught you your accent. It may have changed since, but who taught you your accent and told you that you were called Rebecca, also taught you to be frightened of pigeons.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? So, and have you had any pets growing up?
Yeah, dogs. I once had a tarantula, hamsters, rats, all sorts.
That is so cool. I love that. So you see, again, so this is the process that we do with people, giving them contra evidence, as you quite rightly took from our book. So I would also say, well, just imagine the scenario. Have you got a dog right now, or do your
parents have a dog?
My parents have a dog.
Okay. So if I were to say to you, let's say I came to your home, Rebecca, or your parents' home, and just said, "Oh, I hate dogs," what would you say to me? Just get that dog away from me. I hate them, and I ran out the room.
I tell you, he won't hurt you. You're absolutely fine. And tell you to come inside.
Okay, but I don't know why. I just hate them. I just don't want to.
I'd ask you, why do you hate them? He'll be fine. Okay. It'll be fine. I'll tell you to just come in. He'll be fine. He's lovely.
Yeah, but now I'm telling you, I said, Rebecca, but the thing is, my mum was frightened of dogs.
I'd say to you, you're not your mother. And why was she scared of dogs? And there's no need to be afraid, probably.
Okay. You're not your mother, are you?
No. Very different.
Interesting. So have you got any evidence? So to be frightened of something and to be to the point where you run away from it, you must have some evidence of being attacked personally or mugged,
robbed.
Something. You must have some injuries or scars. Just so you can say, yeah, but Nick, look at this, that pigeon, look what it did.
No, I don't.
Okay. And the pigeon that you said that flew at you, just give me those circumstances again. What happened there?
What specifically? Or yeah. I feel like pigeons generally have flown around me living in London.
Okay.
Just you?
No, not just me.
Okay. So I'd like just to consider a world where we are the size of pigeons and there are giants in that world. And those giants are wandering around. And they come out of shops, they come out of different places, and suddenly you don't know where if that was the case and you were one of those, and those giants were coming around, would you jump out of the way? And if you could fly, would you fly out of the way?
Yeah, completely.
Okay, and why would you do that?
Because as the pigeon, you'd be scared of the giants.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So why do you think the pigeons, when you go close to them, why do you think they fly away?
Because they're scared of me.
Okay, and surely if you're telling me that you're frightened of them, surely that's a positive thing when they're flying away from you, is it not?
When they're flying away from me, yes. Yes, it's a good thing.
And surely if someone who's obviously an animal lover, because you've got diverse pets from a dog to a tarantula, you should be concerned about them and making sure that actually, I'll try not to frighten them, and I'll make sure that they can get away without being injured.
That's true. I haven't ever thought of it like that.
There we go. Because sadly, some people do frighten. They don't give care. Because when we're in London, I'm always observing animals, and if I see any pigeons, I'll try and walk around them because I don't want to frighten them. Because sadly, some pigeons do get frightened and they fly. They just fly erratically and they get run down by taxis and cars and things. And actually, before Tesla started creating a noise on them, because Teslas were so quiet, specifically by Tesla cars as well. Right. So what I'd like to do is consider how sad that is for pigeons.
Yeah, I feel quite guilty now.
And can you imagine, right, knowing that your only food source is really having to go round, right, where the human beings, where they're having meals and so on, and get scraps, because other than that, you might starve to death.
Yeah. Poor pigeons.
It's quite sad, really, isn't it?
I feel bad.
Yeah, and then, and then let's also consider that in London, the pigeons used to be able to land anywhere, and Trafalgar Square was, they can't go there anymore now. And the spikes everywhere. So those ledges where they just fly and, when they're so tired and they just go, I just want to sit down somewhere, and they go on a ledge, spikes.
Mm.
So thinking about pigeons now, you said 7 or an 8.
Yeah, probably a 3. I don't think I'd run out because then I'd scare the pigeon.
Exactly. Because you're a kind person.
Yeah. Nice.
So basically, that's our therapy, right?
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
And it's a 3. It's a 3 now. But once you've had time, you see, what we know from experience is the longer you've had something, then when you get the contra evidence, you need time to process it, because you've had a learning from your mum that pigeons.
And the question is, what actually scared you? Like, what actually scared you
in the first place?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you. It was your mum. So if you're going to be scared of anybody, you should be frightened of your mum, surely.
Yeah.
Because it was your mum that scared you. The pigeons never.
Your mum taught you the fear.
So if we go back to the root, what actually created the fear? A pigeon had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was innocent, and it's been persecuted all this time for being something awful, when all it is a very nervous little animal that just, wants to live its life.
So consider that so what actually happened, your mum taught you to fear pigeons, and then you have to justify that position as to why you're frightened of them. So you look for evidence to confirm that fear. But essentially,
which is why phobias, obviously, or year in, year out, seem to accelerate. It's because we exercise that phobia,
and you've gathered more evidence.
And we gather more evidence, and we look for it, and it's sort of, it's something we want to avoid. Yet we're scanning for it constantly. Whereas now, realizing that the kind thing to do is because they are so.
They have a tough life.
Yeah, they're very tough life. They do.
But so would you combine this kind of, what the impression I'm getting is a very kind of dialectic approach. You're having this dialogue back and forth that I could see you were having with Rebecca. And then would you combine that with like a little behavioral experiment if they had a phobia?
Yes. Well, we tend to, where possible, actually then use exposure. Because what we'd like to do is to say to somebody, let's say it was a pigeon. I've got let's go outside and look at a pigeon. How are you feeling? Let's score that. Let's see how far you can get to that pigeon. And then once we've got to the point where we have with Rebecca, then we would ask the question, are you ready to come outside with us? and have a look at that pigeon.
And then we'd want to recreate the same set of circumstances as near as possible. So then you've got, as much as you can, a clear defined before and after. So you can go, yes, I'm okay, as opposed to, right, well,
I feel good, but I don't know.
But I'm not sure.
I'll have to go out and see what happens.
Or maybe I'm okay with that pigeon, but if I see them, a lot of them, I might not be okay. So we try and get the same set of circumstances.
So we like to try and, same set of circumstances, and try and predict all eventualities that person may come across, to then, whether it be actually showing them in person, or, getting something up on YouTube or photographs, whatever it might be. Because again, the fact is that Rebecca has had many years collecting evidence as to why she shouldn't like them. And now she'll slowly start collecting evidence as to why actually she's been a bit unfair to them, and misjudged them, and that actually they've got no interest in her at all, and literally when they're flying away it's because they're absolutely petrified. So she'll start to collect more evidence to the contrary, and we like to start offering that, giving our clients a substantial start with that contra evidence. So that they can feel confident, and it's funny really, because a lot of people that we've worked with who have had phobias of pigeons, for example, after a while they actually stop seeing them, because you stop scanning, because they're no longer.
They don't need to be hypervigilant for something that they need to be afraid of.
Like evolution, you only look out for the things that you're supposed to be afraid of, and then when you're no longer afraid of them, you stop seeing them.
Exactly.
But you should notice now, Rebecca, when you think about pigeons now, the score is even less.
Yeah, I want to go and challenge myself now and see if I could go and touch a pigeon.
Exactly. And that's really interesting too, because when have you ever wanted to go out when have you ever wanted to go and touch a pigeon?
Absolutely never in my life before.
Never, right.
So we know that the thought process, the schema potentially behind pigeons has now started to change.
Well, the last thing that I just wanted to consider, just so you get a full angle on this, is the fact that, as we highlighted, so your mum installed the fear in you, and then you look for evidence to back up that fear. And that's a bit like if you imagine that you got attacked and someone hit you with a baseball bat, for example, and then you call the police, and the police came along and said, right, Rebecca, can you describe your attacker? And you say, yes, it was a bat. It was about 18 inches long, and it was wooden.
It was made of wood and a white handle.
Yeah, and police said, no, not what you got hit with. Describe the attacker. And you go, no, it was an 18-inch bat, and it hurt like hell, and they go, no, what is it? And that's a concept, you see, because what you were doing, the pigeon was essentially the bat, whereas your mum was the attacker, using that as a scenario, if that makes sense. And once you shift the blame from the pigeon or the bat to the attacker or your mum, I'm talking really badly about your mummy, and I don't mean that. It's literally just an example.
Apologies to Rebecca's mum. I hope she's not listening.
She better be listening. She better listen to my podcast.
Yeah, once you shift the blame, it all changes.
Hi, Rebecca's mum. We actually think you're okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah. But Rebecca's mum, if you listen to these examples, hopefully you'll get over your fear pigeon as well.
But our sort of line is, see it for what it is and not how it felt.
Or how you were taught.
Completely makes sense. And not so long ago, I was on a bus and a man flashed me. And then I started to fear buses. But you've actually made me realise that it's not the bus that I feared. It was the man that flashed me. So why should I be afraid of getting on a bus when it was actually the individual?
Exactly. Correct. And it's actually, next time you see him, you're in a better position, because if you saw him, you'd know to keep away from him, whereas somebody else might not. But yeah, that's unfair and blaming the bus, because the bus was a service provider that was doing exactly what you asked it to take you from one place to another.
Yeah, completely. And it's the same with planes as well. I think you spoke about fears of planes,
exactly,
and cars.
Exactly.
Read the book so that you understand if anyone's listening. And
I really love the fact that you're taking this and running with it.
Yeah, and
right?
and obviously we can tell that you've definitely read our Conquering Anxiety book, because you've taken bits out of there. But yeah, absolutely right. It's when we apportion blame to the right thing, and we can see it for what it was and not how we were made to feel, then we can start to rationalise. Because obviously a phobia is an irrational fear, but when we can start rationalising it, then that's when it kind of, that power starts to diminish of that fear.
Have you ever had anyone where you haven't been able to successfully treat them? It's just too hard, or maybe the phobia was valid, it was rational?
No.
Do you know what? I don't think there ever is a rational one, really, but the only variable in this process is time.
Yeah, that's the only, and positive intent. So if somebody has a positive intent on keeping something, so for example, if somebody were to come to see us and say, my partner sent me here because I've got XYZ, then the likelihood is that they will not be listening to what we've got to say because
they're not ready to engage.
They're not ready to give it. And for some people, like I say, a good friend of mine, she said that she couldn't be a passenger in a car. And we were like, oh, well, you never told us this before. Let's sort it out. And it was actually a dinner party. So we can have a chat now if you want. Oh, no, she said, it's not really the right moment. And then we said, well, look, why don't you come over for a cup of tea next week or come over at the weekend?
Can you say she did go into great detail of how
it makes
being a passenger in a car is so bad and it affects the family. And they would holiday somewhere, they'd take skiing holidays, I think in somewhere in France. And what would have to happen is that she'd have to fly whilst the family drove there, and they spend like 2 months there, and it was such an inconvenience for the family.
Anyway, but cut a very long story short, after kind of saying to her numerous times, let's chat, and she kept finding excuses, we then realised that it was her thing. So for her, she was a mum, she was a stay-at-home mum, she had 3 boys, and they were all getting on with their life, and she felt she had nothing, and this
gave her significance.
This gave her some significance and attention, so she didn't want to let it go. So it just depends, but we believe that there's nothing certainly no phobia or anxiety disorder that can't be treated. It might take a little bit of time. I think that on television we're quite well known for curing phobias in a very short space of time, but obviously there are phobias that are complex that will take longer. So whether that's agoraphobia or perhaps emetophobia can take maybe more than one session, which is fear of vomit, just because it's got so many components and behaviours associated to it. But there's absolutely nobody that should be living with any anxiety disorder or phobia all their life, because there is always a way of getting around it.
Yeah, like you said in your book, you are not broken. You're not broken, and there's always a way out.
No, I was just going to mention, you mentioned like rational phobias, and I think that's quite an interesting point, because I think a lot of people will come to you and say, but my phobia is rational. A lot of that comes from the fact that people, obviously, to have a phobia have to justify it. So they look, like what you were saying before, they look for evidence of reasons as to why they should have that.
Yeah.
So, people who say, for example, they've got like a phobia of dogs, and then they'll say, well, dogs have attacked people. They look for evidence of those things. And I suppose that, it's that thing of, if it was rational, everyone would have that fear. Right?
And that's right. And whilst people have said that to us, well, dogs can attack you, we can immediately come back with, well, are you in a relationship? And they go, yes. And say, well, people can attack you as well. So what you're doing in a relationship, that sounds very dangerous to us. So ultimately, as Liv was saying, people, if you have an irrational fear, you've got to find some justification.
Yeah.
Another one that people use a lot is a fear of heights, and saying, well, yeah, but heights are dangerous. Well, they're not if you respect them.
Knives are dangerous.
Same with needles as well. I think a lot of people say that injections and needles, well, they do hurt, but no one enjoys having it. But if it's really affecting your life to an extent, it's irrational, isn't it?
I think what it is that people try and make an unacceptable situation acceptable by selling it to themselves, ultimately. And I get it. If we've got something that holds us back, then we will. We've got to. If we're living with it, we've got to try and sell it to ourselves.
And I think sadly, a lot of people think that they can never overcome things. And our biggest mission in life is to let people know that there's hope. And that was one thing that had. Fortunately for me, going right back to the beginning of this conversation, my dad always gave me hope. And I've met so many people who were in a situation like me, and they had that life-saving operation, and because they didn't have the hope that I had. And that's been our mission ever since, is just trying to make people aware that, look, you can overcome things, because essentially our baseline is you weren't born with them.
Yeah. So if you're not born with it, you shouldn't have to live your life with it.
I think one of the most important facts in psychology which people aren't aware of is the idea that there's way too much of the world and reality for you to process at any one time. So in any given moment, all you're seeing is like your version of reality. And as I'm listening to this conversation, I keep thinking about the movie The Matrix, which isn't surprising because I think about The Matrix a lot. But it's this idea that, I think one of the most important things to be successful when you're getting psychotherapy is a willingness to accept that the way you're perceiving reality isn't 100% accurate, and to develop flexibility, to start seeing the world in a new way, that things which previously inspired all this fear, there's a number of dimensions to them that you can appreciate, that you're just totally unaware, you're unconsciously unaware of them. And so like opening up those new aspects, it's so helpful, because you realize the world isn't people fall into this trap of feeling like they know the world completely. They've mapped it out. Like I had a client recently tell me, that's life and that's what it is, as if
that's it, done.
He's discovered all that life has to offer.
Yeah.
It's very strange how we all fall into this mental trap, I think, when we're particularly in the areas that we're stuck in. The trap of, I know, this is entirely explored territory.
Whatever will be, just accepting that your life will be like that. And that's not,
exactly,
doesn't seem to me a positive way of thinking.
It is very sad. And I mean, I love that you mentioned The Matrix, and, and then looking at the other end of the scale, you can look at, what the way that we perceive the world is our view on the world, and therefore we've got to accept that view is entirely made up by ourselves, and therefore if we can make up the current view that we've got, then we can make up any view. Yeah, which leaves infinite possibilities for us all, just like The Matrix. What if?
I mean, what I would say is to that though, there's this chess game, right? You're playing this chess game with reality and with your own nature, your own biology. So it's like there is clearly scope for human creation. That's the cool thing about being human, is we have this creative ability. We can create our own environment. To some degree, we can create our reality. But what's beautiful about it is it's not unrestricted like any video game. It has rules. So you're this dance of creation versus the limitations of reality, and you're doing this, you're constantly negotiating with reality, and that's really where the fun of life comes from, I think.
But what you're saying with that, Alex, sounds to me quite complex. But I have to say, your book, Nik and Eva, it makes things seem very simple. Sorry, Alex. But your book is very gentle, and you just describe things in a very simple, both of the books, Everyday Confidence and Conquer Anxiety. It just seems so simple. And one of the main things that I've also taken away is the beginning of the book, Everyday Confidence, you have to write a timeline, and it makes you reflect on all the negative things that happened in your life. And then if you see those in a positive way, you start to see life in a positive way. And to me, that sounds simple, but it's not something that we naturally do because of all of our schemas and everything that's happened to us. But actually, just by doing that simple task, you really can see things in a positive way. And it's it's not rocket science, but it does work.
Yeah, and it's like where Alex said earlier about destigmatizing things. When you actually see it written down on paper, it does give you that, oh, well, I can give myself a bit of a break here. I did have a challenging childhood. And it definitely does, because, fundamentally, who are we? We are a product of our environment. We are a product of our experiences, people that have influenced us, etc. And therefore, if that's the case, then there are likely to be, in most people's lives, things that have happened and influences that have occurred that have created behaviors, beliefs, sort of maybe anxieties within us. And we always, even in private therapy, we always start with a timeline. We kind of host workshops all around the country, and it's so lovely to hear, and thank you, Rebecca, that you say that we put it quite simply. We like to keep it simple because, number one, why complicate it? But number two, that if people can understand, we meet so many people. We host workshops, and we have so many people there that really think, they come to these workshops, or they come and see us, and it's almost like we're their last hope. And again, it sort of comes back to what Alex was saying, is that when you say to people, right, well, it's no wonder that you feel the way you do. We start our workshops where we have a slide with a jigsaw puzzle, and the sort of the line that I start the day with is that you come into this world like this perfect jigsaw puzzle. You're this perfect picture, but you are made up of many pieces. And then you go through life. So it might be that you're sent to nursery and a new baby comes along, and you think as a 3-year-old, oh my goodness, that they're sending me away, and yet they're at home with this new baby. That must mean that I'm not good enough. And a little piece of your jigsaw puzzle gets knocked upside down, and then you see your mum screaming at a pigeon, and bang, another piece of your jigsaw gets knocked upside down as you create a phobia of pigeons. And then you might have a friend at school that turns on you and starts being mean to you, and then bang, another piece of your jigsaw puzzle gets knocked upside down as you believe and start to create feelings that you're not good enough, and you start creating these foundations of low self-esteem. And then you're reading out in class like everybody is, and you're reading out a paragraph, you say a word wrong, everybody starts laughing, and bang, another few pieces of your jigsaw puzzle get knocked upside down as you create this belief that if I speak out publicly, people are going to laugh at me, so I need to protect myself from that. And then it might be that you've got an alcoholic parent, or a parent that's very angry, and you hear your parents arguing all the time, and you think, oh my goodness, I can't cope with this, I really don't know what to do. And you're only little, so you're very limited on what you can do, so you believe in magic, so you start to tap things because a friend told you that tapping brings magic, and you create an OCD. And then that you might find that you see somebody being humiliated in class because they're sick, and you think, oh my God, I'd hate to feel humiliated. So then you create a metaphobia, and then you have your heart broken, and you believe then that relationships equal pain, and more pieces of your jigsaw puzzle get knocked upside down. So albeit you may feel broken, and to some degree some of the pieces may not be there, but ultimately may have been knocked out of their place, but ultimately all the pieces are still there. It's just that they're not where they should be. And that timeline allows you to systematically put those pieces back together one at a time. And that's how we, obviously in the workshops I give more examples, and it's amazing that at the end of just that little bit, and then when we come to the first break, the thing that most people will say is, oh my God, I came in this room thinking that I was beyond repair, that it was just me, that there was something terribly wrong with me. And you've just kind of given my life story there. Obviously, because we've been doing it for so long and we've been hosting workshops for so many years now, there is a repetition of stories that you hear. So I try and kind of include those. Or if our office says to me, there's people in the room that we know have got this and that, then I will incorporate that into that jigsaw analogy. But keeping it simple is just the best way, because then it kind of, we understand it and get it. So thank you. That was a lovely compliment to think that.
It was. And I feel that one of the most powerful things that we have available to us as human beings is choice. Because we said about the timeline, ultimately we have the choice whether we want to look at those events in our life and feel victims and sad about them, or whether we want to look at them and change, looking back at them as an adult and going, okay, I can see the reason what happened, and I know what came out of that, which was a great thing. And you can totally restructure that event, which will change how you look at your life. And one of the things that I love saying to people is, it is never too late to have a happy childhood.
I think that's lovely. I think that's a lovely thing to say. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, and I want to include Liv and talk about your therapy, VSDT, visual schema displacement therapy, if that's okay. Is it all right if both you and Liv tell me a bit about it and the exciting evidence that you mentioned earlier?
Yes.
Do you want to sort of make?
Yes, absolutely. It was one of the things that it came from, that we noticed that when we were working with people who, and it's our view, incidentally, Rebecca and Alex, that most people's issues come from trauma. And that trauma is contextual. So trauma as an adult might be being attacked, but trauma as a child might be your best toy that you've wanted for years getting broken. So trauma in context. But we noticed that when people talk to us about trauma, that they always tend to look in the same position. And when we kept asking them more about the event, they always looked in the same position. So we just had this thought, well, what if they're accessing a certain point in their mind there to find that situation? And then when we asked them about things that made them laugh, we noticed that a lot of the time it was in the opposite position, where if you looked at the face of a clock, it was in an opposite position. And we thought, what if we could scramble those two things? And we, through a period of time, developed our visual schema displacement therapy. And we're quite fortunate that we got approached, I think it's about 5-6 years ago now.
The first study was published in the Journal of Behaviour Therapy and Experimental Psychiatry in November 2018. So it must have been about 2016 perhaps, that we met with the professors, and then
Professor de Jong had seen us using the therapy, and he just said that, and he was the professor who actually brought EMDR to Europe. I think it was back in 1984, and he was very excited seeing the results and thought, well, this is something that could be comparable to EMDR, and asked us if we would be interested in them conducting scientific studies. So we got invited over to the Netherlands, and we were asked to work with 3 of their patients who had PTSD and have been through their process, and we worked with them and got great results with them. So as a result of that, they said, right, okay, we would like to study your therapy.
Yeah, so that was like saying about 2016, and I think the first study was 33. Is there 33 people in the first study?
So it's essentially, yeah, when we talked about the study, it was agreed to, because VSDT is quite a quick therapy as such, and so the guidelines were, let's do this over 8 minutes, let's compare it with EMDR and a control condition. And we worked with, And
that was for individuals with PTSD, wasn't it?
Trauma. The PTSD is ultimately what they wanted to use it for. But obviously in the first trials, it was just anybody, because obviously it was volunteers from the university who had disturbing memories from specific events in their life. And they
because when they start experimental studies, they usually use shall we say healthy participants, but as a standard practice for the first studies, and then it moves on as you go through the studies, and the fourth study now is actually with hospital patients.
Yeah, so you have to get that obviously approval from like the General Medical Council to provide that. So you'd start off with sort of like general participants that were just thinking of like traumatic or aversive memories, and then when you see that success with those, and obviously increasing sample sizes, the kind of general progression, and we see that it's making a big difference to people for traumatic memories, then you progress to like those people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I think it's really interesting now specifically because I don't know if you're aware, but I know that Prince Harry actually has been shining a light a lot on EMDR and the benefits of EMDR as a trauma therapy, and how great he personally found it. And I think that now, obviously, we're trauma therapies. It's becoming really interesting, and people are really excited by the fact that EMDR is coming into the spotlight, and I think the fact that this is being compared to EMDR, and we're seeing it being as successful, more successful than EMDR.
Well, being termed as superior in the study so far.
I think the line is in all 3 studies is that it states that the efficacy of our VSDT supersedes that of EMDR in a nutshell. So the first study was printed in the Journal of Behaviour Therapy and Experimental Psychiatry. Actually, that was 2018, and then the second one was April 2021, and that was in the European Journal of Psychotraumatology. And literally, they tested VSDT, which is our therapy, against EMDR in a control condition. And in all the studies, VSDT came out being the most successful of all 3. And so they now have obtained approval for the clinical trial. So it's currently in a hospital in Utrecht. Is it Utrecht? No, it's not Utrecht, is it? It's Bilthoven. In Bilthoven, with sort of now with patients. And what's very exciting is that we trained the professors and the psychologists there, and now in this clinical trial, Dr. Matthijssen, who was one of the original the researchers, she has now trained the psychologists at the hospital. So like I said, for us, that's really exciting because, again, right at the beginning, they said, what we need to understand is
it translatable?
And is it you two, or is it the therapy? And it's great to know that it's the therapy that's creating success.
And then it can be used universally for people that speak any language as well, because obviously, it can be applied across multiple countries, multiple languages, and also, like you say, to different people, that, it can be taught and other people can do it, and we still see that same success, is, everything we wanted to see, really. So it's really exciting. I think
what I like, just read a little abstract here. It says that visual schema displacement therapy, which is VSDT, this is in the second paper. It says it's a novel therapy for the treatment of fears and trauma-related mental health problems, including PTSD. VSDT proved to be effective in reducing emotionality of aversive memories in healthy individuals in 2 previous randomized controlled trials, and outperformed both a non-active control condition and an abbreviated version of EMDR therapy, a well-established first-line treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. And then it does say that VSDT appears to be unique and effective in decreasing emotionality of aversive memories, and replication of the results in clinical samples is needed, which is now underway, and
that would have been obviously completed, but we've been on sort of because of
COVID.
Unfortunately. So obviously there has been delays, but obviously now everything's started back up again, in that sense. So
I've tried to understand exactly what it is, and one of the key components is you involve sighing, and that's also something you use in your book. Is that one of the core features that seems to help in terms of alleviating the trauma?
Do you know what? I don't know, because that's exactly what they were also doing, was breaking down the therapy.
Yeah, in the third study, what they wanted to do is take items out of the VSDT to see if any were more productive than the others, and essentially they found that they were all the components did still work.
So even removing one component out of each group, it was still effective. So we're not quite sure which part of it, whether it's the eye movement, whether it's the sound.
But they one of the things that they concluded was that potentially it was the fact that you have to conduct several working memory tasks at the same time. There's counter conditioning and also surprise and destabilization. And they want to know, is it one of those components? But it still worked even taking those out. But it's something that from our personal perspective, we've always used all the components and we've always had great personal success.
Yeah, and I think that the final study each study, obviously, each time it's gone up with more participants. So the first one started, I think, with 33 participants. The second went up to
74, and then the last one was 144.
And the last one was 144, and it's been consistent that the efficacy of our therapy has been superior. And now, like I say, we've got the clinical trials. Now, we don't know the results of those. I know that they are very. We met with.
They expect the results to be in May.
Yes.
And they expect to publish those results by the end of the year.
Which is really exciting, because the professors with ourselves are saying, like, now we need to be talking about perhaps doing some sort of training and moving this forward, because it is. Yeah, because we just, I've got to be honest, we've always said we would love to give our therapy to the NHS. Or to the MOD. We actually approached the MOD not that long ago, was it? A few years ago, and said, look, we've got this great therapy. We've worked with loads of people with PTSD who have been free of symptoms for 6 years plus. A lot of soldiers, a lot of army personnel who had been previously diagnosed with complex PTSD, and we approached them and said, look, we've got this therapy, you can have it, we'll show you how to do it. But they actually said to us that as much as they were aware of our work and aware of our success, and because we were saying, well, look, why don't you speak to these people? Some of them have been on TV, some of them we've seen privately. whilst they appreciated all that and were incredibly kind, they actually basically said to us, we can't use it without scientific backing, which is why we've been so happy with this. Excuse me.
And I think what's good, well, with this is with it being, I would just say with this being a visual therapy as well, what's great is that it doesn't necessarily rely on people, having to talk so much about everything they've been through and experience, which obviously is a lot of,
Yeah, so we were talking to a professor at Worcester University, and because Professor de Jong that was the sort of instigator of the research into our therapy, he's an honorary professor. He's a professor at Amsterdam University. He's an honorary professor at Salford University in England and Worcester. And the professor at Worcester University was incredibly excited because he said, what's great about your therapy, he said, is that you could take that to war-torn countries where you don't even have to speak the language to actually be able to do this. So it's very exciting, and we're incredibly grateful to both Dr. Matthijssen and Professor de Jong for believing in it and for showing that it works, and for the fact that they're helping us to move this forward so more people will be able to benefit from it.
If you guys send us the studies, sorry Rebecca, if you guys send us the studies, we can put them in the show notes so people can have a look.
Perfect. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, we'll send you the links to them. They are. It's so wonderful. Honestly, it's such quite overwhelming, really, and quite emotional. Because we knew we were speaking to you today, we kind of pulled them out because we've got copies of them, and you just kind of rereading them, and you see the results, and you see that that something that you've created is making a difference, and it doesn't, and you're not even there. It's difficult to describe, but it is just incredibly rewarding.
And moving forward, our next mission is to work with a university in the UK to do scientific studies on our schema conditioning.
Yeah, because
I was going to say, what's the next step?
Well, to do scientific studies on our schema conditioning, and also another therapy that we have created called VSDR, which is visual schema detachment and restructuring.
Which is a big mouthful.
Which is a big mouthful.
But it works brilliantly. It's something that we demonstrate at our workshops, actually, literally just to help people there and then. And again, the results of that, literally we just will do a demonstration. So we will just say, has anybody got like trauma or whatever in the room? And people put their hand up, and literally we'll just like, come on then. And just to see, it's so simple, so quick, and to see and to hear about the sort of repercussions, the positive repercussions of that. There's one lady in particular that springs to mind that literally we do a live on our Facebook and Instagram on a Monday evening, and she just can't believe that she's lived with PTSD since being a child after being abused, and she came to a workshop last year, and since that workshop she hasn't had a single panic attack. She's been able to now sleep. She's no longer on high alert. She has no flashbacks. She has no nightmares. She has no negative feelings even towards the event that occurred when she thinks about it, but now she has to force the thought because it's not even part of her life anymore. She feels like she's been set free from it, and to know that just a short chat with somebody in a room made that kind of a difference. It feels wrong that we should just hold on to it. We want to share it. We don't want anything for it. We're happy to just share it. Give it away. Because.
And what distinguishes VSDR?
The difference with VSDR is what we ask is for someone to construct a visual image of the event, and we ask them to, when they consider that image, they consider the position of that image, and usually that's somewhere around their face, and they'll go, oh, that image is here. Yeah, sun's in my eye, but somewhere around here. And then what we look to do is find a neutral image or something that doesn't bother them. And what we then is we look to remove that image to a different point and then restructure it and just talk to them about that new image. And then it just feels like, and people just say, I just feel like the weight's been lifted, it's gone. Because it's amazing how, particularly if someone has been in an abusive relationship, or they've been abused or something, when they think about the person that carried out the abuse, usually the image of the person's face is near theirs, and it seems that they feel oppressed by that visual image.
And just movement of that. And then obviously I know that, Rebecca, you mentioned the sighing. That is something that we use a lot. What we and again, this just goes by sort of observing people over the years that we've worked with. What we've actually noticed is that when they change their thought process, you see a physical kind of
well, there's three things. Firstly, someone will say that I've never thought about it like that before. Secondly, they then do like a physical movement as though they're letting something go, and then they sigh, which is the third thing.
So we wondered what, and this is why we incorporated the sigh. Primarily just think, well, you know, we don't know if it works or not. But
knowing that people sigh when they let something go, what if we made someone sigh? Then would that force letting something go if we did it the other way around? And
honestly, the results that we get from that sighing, in fact, and then we were reading some research about sighing because we're like, well, why is this getting so many? Like, why does this seem to make such a difference? And then we were reading just some studies that have done that suggest that sighing offers the same effects as something like meditation and mindfulness. You know, that it might release alpha waves in the brain, and that's potentially a reason as to why. So, so sighing is something that, you know, even I think it was 2 days ago, somebody on Facebook, one of our Facebook pages, was saying that they were going to the dentist and they were absolutely petrified. And we just went back and went, look, think about going to the dentist, see yourself going in with confidence and just keep sighing, and do that a few times before you go. She was going the following morning. The next day on our Facebook, she actually said that she'd been to the dentist and that it was the first time that she actually walked out with a smile on her face. So, and that was just literally by sharing, you know, the sign, what we call the sign technique. So, but yeah, it's just kind of.
I wanted to say as well, you mentioned the VSDR, is that right? And that's quite similar to your bungee jumping technique that you talk about in the book. And I did that with someone that I would say kind of bullied me at work a few years ago, and I was okay about it, but I still recognized that it was bullying. And I did it, and it really made a difference. And I feel so much more separated from this person now. It didn't massively affect me, but it genuinely worked afterwards. I really enjoyed I enjoyed it. It really made me feel better after I'd done it.
Yes.
It feels really good to kind of push that person away mentally. Just let them go and make them nothing.
Yeah. Right. Well,
amazing. Yeah.
VSDR,
that's our nickname for it. The bungee technique. Yeah.
Is what we call we sort of, because it's such a mouthful, we do call it the bungee technique. So it's the same thing.
I'm glad. I mean, it's never going to harm
Absolutely.
you, is it?
Yeah.
I thought, why not give it a go? And I really enjoyed it. I've been off all week, and I've been sitting in my gym all week just reading the books, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So that
I so love, Rebecca, that you've not only have you read our books, but you're using the techniques within them. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely.
But what's also interesting with that is that, and you can try this as well, if you ever get those, if you feel that you're craving something, right? So let's say it's sweets or chocolate or something, and you know that really you shouldn't be having them, but you're craving them. If you think about whatever that you're craving, you know, if it's a bar of chocolate and you think about the bar of chocolate and you construct this visual image, and you'll find that, again, it will be somewhere near your face. And then if you just grab hold of the image and then push it to arm's length and then close your eyes and open them again, you'll notice that the craving disappears.
I think there's definitely something to visual, like not a lot of therapies have a visual component, and there's definitely something to that. Have you guys read the book called Psycho-Cybernetics? It's from 1960, so it's an old book which I only came across recently, and it was written by a plastic surgeon who realized that there is this. Yes, there are things we want to fix about ourselves, but there's also this thing called like a psychological self-image that we have. What it find is to do plastic surgery on people and find they were very dissatisfied with the results, because even though their face physically changed and objectively improved, their self-image remained the same. So he developed a series of visualization techniques. And it's a bestseller. It sold millions of copies, came out in 1960, and influenced a lot of people in the kind of self-development sphere, but we're visual creatures, and so there's definitely something to, I think, using visualization.
That
sounds like an amazing book. And I think one of the, I suppose the best example I could cite about someone who really struggled with that was Michael Jackson.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Because Michael Jackson, whatever, I mean, I don't know how many surgeries he had, but if you look at Michael from when he was a child to an adult, and the different changes in his face, which, I've been watching programs with plastic surgeons commenting on it, saying that, potentially there's as many as 20 operations. That's someone who, was a good looking guy and incredibly talented, but didn't see what everyone else saw.
Mm. Yeah.
But that sounds like an incredible book.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't. It completely makes sense.
I wonder how that fits into filters on Instagram as well. You guys touch on social media in your books as well, and I'm very much in agreement with your views, even though I use Instagram and Twitter, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. And it helps with promoting the podcast, of course. But yeah, I wonder how that touches into using filters, and how I would imagine, haven't done the read on studies of it, but I don't think people's mental health improves by using filters on Instagram.
Oh, absolutely.
No, and it's concerning. I mean, I suppose that from our generation, we've got some element of normality. So we can, if we want to enhance a photograph, we might use a filter occasionally. But now what concerns me are, the children of today who everything has got a filter, or, taking one photograph, they might take 100 photographs and then post one of those photographs, and it is concerning because
it's a realistic comparison.
It is, because then the problem with that is that you've got people making comparisons towards that, and ultimately we live by comparison, whether, we like that or not. Whether we like something or not, we have to make a comparison. And there's too many.
Yeah, we're competitive.
Yeah, and there's too many false comparisons in the world right now. And, and I think that, I don't know, it concerns me how what the future is going to hold in relation to that. Because while social media is amazing, and, the fact that we've got podcasts and, we can share this amazing information with people, but equally it's that double-edged sword again, where social media can be really bad.
No, for sure. Nik and Eva, thank you so much for talking to us today. I can't thank you enough, and I've loved absolutely every minute of it. I was wondering, does anyone else have any questions before we round up?
Anya's been quietly sitting in. Anya, do you have any questions you want to ask?
I mean, one question which maybe is a big question is, what is it? Do you have a feel for what it is that helps you help people so quickly? Because I guess, like, working as a junior doctor in the NHS, you're just often faced with a sense of hopelessness of people who've been through the system for so long, and you often see patients again and again, and nothing seems to help.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is, and that really makes us feel very sad, because obviously you're the people look to you, don't they, expecting you to have all the answers, I guess, as well, and that in itself must be very difficult for you. However, I think the thing that, and again, Alex also mentioned it, I think it's to let people know that, listen, you might feel really bad, but you're having a normal response to abnormal circumstances. You've gone through things in your life that you shouldn't have. And basically, and we always say to everybody that we meet, you're not broken. There's always
you're not broken, and it's you've got to understand that you are acting normally to abnormal situations, and therefore it's not what is wrong with you, it is just a result of what happened to you.
I think also, Anya, and maybe you guys hear this as well, is that a lot of people, particularly I think, so when people tend to come to us is because they've tried a lot of things, and they do very much admit that we're their last resort, and which is a huge pressure. However,
very humbling.
It is terrifying. It is as well. But a lot of people say, but I've tried CBT, that didn't work. I've had counselling, that didn't work. I've tried EMDR, that didn't work.
Again, I think that's a massive generalisation that people do, because people say that to us all the time, exactly. And we say, well, and incredibly, we will see people who've had, they've had CBT, they've had hypnosis, they've had EMDR, and none of this stuff works. And one of the things that I always say to people is, can I ask you, before you went for that therapy and for your issue, whatever that issue may be, did you ask the therapist how many people they've successfully managed to overcome they've helped someone with that condition? And everyone says, well, no, that'd be rude. Right? But ultimately, if you want to get over something, you want to know that that therapist or whoever you're seeing has helped someone over the same issue as you. And if they haven't, and they go, well, I haven't, but I'm going to work through it with you, then at least they know. But what people do, they take ownership and think, well, I've seen 10 therapists, so I must be really broken. Because every time they see someone and don't get the success, they feel worse. So being able to say to someone, and again, it really breaks the ice. And one of the most common phobia that we work with is emetophobia, and it's a complex phobia, as you probably know, and it can lead to OCD behaviours and so on. And we always say to people, how many, the complete questionnaire before they come and see us. So we know, well, right, you've seen 5 therapists, and nothing's worked. So I've seen you help people on the TV, but you won't be able to help me because I've already seen 5 people. And we always say, out of those 5 people, how many of them have told you of people that they've cured from emetophobia? And they go, well, none of them, because I didn't ask the question. So straight away, you're sort of taking them back to, oh, this is like not having had any therapy. I'm back to the beginning. Right, I get it, because the people that I've seen may not have helped anyone. So therefore, it wasn't me. Potentially, it was them, because they'd never experienced that situation before.
What we always say is, look, I understand that you've had a lot of therapy, but the truth is that EMDR, psychotherapy, counselling, psychiatry,
they all work.
It works. However, it works for some people some of the time, and just like anything else, you might go to the hairdressers. I know this has happened to me in my lifetime, and that I've been to various. Why is it that I'm not with the same hairdresser today as I was 30 years ago? And the truth is that you'll go and have your hair cut with one person, and they get they might not get exactly what you want.
I've had some bad haircuts, Eva.
Oh, you have?
Yes, you've seen them.
But you don't stop having your hair cut. You don't give up on hairdressers. You just go and find another hairdresser. And it's the same with therapy. For sometimes some therapists will excel in some areas. Some therapists might not quite get a grasp of what it is you're looking for, or they might not quite understand it. It doesn't make them a bad therapist. It just might mean that you've got to go to different therapists to get that answer. So it's to never ever give up. And it doesn't matter how many therapists you've had. Keep going until you find the one that gets it and that can help you. But ultimately, know that you're absolutely not broken, and there is always hope.
But our overriding belief is absolutely everyone can get better. No exceptions.
That's a really important message. I think that's really, really important, because if you don't have that hope, then you have nothing really. So I think that's really important. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. I'd love to speak to you for longer, but I'm sure you're very busy.
Yeah, we'd love to get on this list.
Thank you.
Sorry, Liv, you didn't want to.
Yeah, and I have to say that obviously, Speakman, we couldn't have a better name. We are by name and nature, and we absolutely love what we do. We love helping people.
You can tell. I can tell you love what you do, by the way.
And the absolute biggest message is there is hope out there. And just because no matter what's happened to you, no matter how bad you feel, and if you're in the absolute depths of despair, you can get better. You can get better without question.
And even the fact that your new therapies are coming out and things like that, there's constantly, science is constantly updating. There's always new therapies. There's always new things coming out. There's always hope, that things will get better, even if they, you can't find something for you right now. It doesn't mean that it's not coming in the future.
Exactly.
We're constantly learning, and that's the most important thing, that we're constantly learning. And there's so many people out there that want to help and want to learn and want to know, how we can help people to be better and feel better. So, we're just going to
keep in there, keep going,
keep hanging in there.
Thank you so much.
You
too. Bye.
Thank you.
You are listening to the Thinking Mind podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please please share it with a friend or give us a rating. It really does help people to find us. If you find the podcast valuable, why not buy us a coffee to help keep us going? There's a link in the show notes. As ever, we love to hear from you and love to hear what you think. So drop us an email or get in touch on social media. Thank you so much.